The air on the open road was suffocating, despite the chill of the late hour. With each passing second, the quiet settled deeper into the landscape, wrapping the world in a blanket of unnatural stillness. I stood by the edge of the highway, the faint glow of my phone barely illuminating the jagged asphalt beneath my boots. The signal bars were dead. Nothing new. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, I might as well have been on another planet. Headlights pierced the darkness in the distance, a faint beam cutting through the void. Relief swept over me, but it was tinged with unease. Hitchhiking wasn't my first choice, especially not at this hour, but the gas station attendant had been wrong about cabs being plenty this way. I had been waiting for 2 hours now. My options were dwindling fast. I stepped forward and raised my hand, the universal gesture of someone desperate for a ride. My shadow stretched across the cracked road as the vehicle approached, its rumble growing louder, mechanical and alive. The car, a beat-up sedan with paint that had seen better days, slowed, its tires crunching over loose gravel before it came to a stop a few feet ahead. The driver rolled down the window. The face inside was that of a middle-aged man, his graying hair messy beneath a baseball cap. His smile was warm but slightly crooked, his eyes hidden in the shadow of the car's interior. "Need a lift?" I hesitated. My instincts whispered caution, but the thought of walking for miles, alone, in the dark. I had no choice. I stepped closer, trying to glimpse more of the man's features, but the dim overhead light in the car barely helped. "Where are you headed?" he asked, his voice friendly yet flat, like it had been practiced. "Just the next town," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Anywhere near there would be great." "Hop in," he said, leaning over to push open the passenger door. "Not much traffic this time of night." I slid into the seat and closed the door behind me. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something metallic. The dashboard lights bathed the space in a sickly green glow. I forced a polite smile and fastened the seatbelt. The car eased back onto the highway, its engine humming steadily. The man tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, a rhythmic drumming that matched the faint ticking of the car's old clock. "What brings you out here alone?" he asked after a long silence. His tone was casual, but something in the way he said it made my skin prickle. "Just traveling," I said vaguely. "Needed a ride after my car broke down." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. This stretch of highway's lonely at night, not a place I'd want to be stranded. He chuckled softly, but the sound didn't quite reach his eyes. The darkness outside pressed against the windows, swallowing the landscape beyond the reach of the headlights. As we drove, the road seemed endless, stretching into nothingness. It wasn't long before I noticed the first oddity. The mile marker we passed, 33, stood stark and illuminated in the headlights, its weathered paint flaking. I glanced at my phone, out of habit, though I already knew it was useless. Then, 10 minutes later, we passed the same marker again. I frowned, gripping my phone tightly despite its blank screen. The number on the mile marker was the same, 33. I was sure of it. The chipped paint on the top corner, the faded numbers. It was identical. "You all right there?" the driver asked, glancing at me briefly before returning his attention to the road. His tone was easy, but the undercurrent of something unspoken made my stomach churn. "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just thought we passed that marker already. Must be imagining things." He didn't respond. His face was unreadable in the dim light, his features almost blending into the shadows of the car. My pulse quickened as I stared out the window. The terrain, rocky, barren, and punctuated by the occasional dead tree, hadn't changed since we started. The endless sameness gnawed at me, each passing moment stretching longer than the last. "I didn't catch your name," the driver said suddenly, breaking the silence. His question hung in the air like a fishing line, waiting for a bite. I didn't give it, I replied, keeping my voice light but guarded. What about yours? He smiled, a faint curve of his lips that didn't feel right. People just call me Sam. Yes, you could say I'm a bit of a road regular. He gestured vaguely at the road ahead, but the motion felt rehearsed, like he was used to explaining himself without saying much. The clock on the dashboard ticked louder in the silence that followed, its rhythm unrelenting. Minutes dragged on, but the landscape stayed stubbornly static. The road twisted and turned, yet we always seemed to end up in the same place. The same mile marker flashed by again. 33. This time the unease was impossible to ignore. Hey, are we going in circles? I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. Sam glanced at me, his smile slipping slightly. Circles? No, we're on a straight stretch. Sometimes these back roads can feel a bit samey, though. Plays tricks on you. I wanted to believe him, but the gnawing sense of wrongness only deepened. The mile marker, the road, the unchanging landscape, they all seemed to conspire against me, each detail cementing the growing realization that something wasn't right. The car's engine hummed steadily, a low, almost hypnotic drone that made it harder to think. I stared at the road ahead, my heart pounding as I tried to grasp what was happening. The mile marker appeared again, its presence an ominous specter in the gloom. It was always 33. The hum of the car filled the space like a low, droning lullaby, but I couldn't relax. My chest felt tight, and my hands, clenched in my lap, were clammy. Sam's grip on the wheel was loose, casual, but his gaze flickered toward me every so often, his dark eyes unreadable in the dashboard's faint glow. Something on your mind? He asked, his voice breaking the tense silence. I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. It's just this road. I swear I've seen the same mile marker 3 times now. Are you sure we're going the right way? His chuckle was soft, almost indulgent. You're not the first passenger to say that, you know. This road has a way of getting under your skin. Long stretches of nothingness. Makes the mind wander. The corners of his mouth twitched upward, but the expression didn't comfort me. Besides, I've driven these roads for years. Trust me, we'll get there. Get where? The question slipped out before I could stop it. To wherever you need to go, he said smoothly, the practiced cadence of his tone making my unease spike. I stared out the window, hoping the passing darkness would somehow provide clarity. But the world outside was as stubbornly static as ever. Jagged trees, cracked asphalt, and the shadow of another mile marker looming ahead. 33rd. My breath hitched. I didn't even try to mask the growing panic in my voice. That's impossible. We're stuck. We're going in circles. Sam didn't look at me. Funny thing about this road. It doesn't like to let go. The air seemed to thicken with his words. My pulse quickened as his grip on the wheel tightened for the first time, knuckles whitening. His demeanor was still calm, but there was something new in his tone. A weight, as though he was carrying a burden too heavy to share. I forced a laugh, trying to break the tension. What does that mean? Sam sighed deeply, finally glancing at me. His face was shadowed, but his expression seemed conflicted. You know, I've picked up a lot of people on this road. Some talk, some don't. Most are just glad to see another car. His lips quirked into a faint, bitter-sweet smile. But they all say the same thing. There's something about this highway that feels off. You noticed it too, didn't you? I swallowed hard, unable to deny it. The mile markers, the unchanging scenery, the oppressive stillness, it all clawed at me like an unseen force. What's wrong with this road? For the first time, Sam's easy demeanor cracked. His smile faltered, and he stared straight ahead, his eyes distant. The thing is, he began slowly, this road isn't for everyone. It wasn't built for convenience or for scenery. It's something else, a place people end up when they're lost. Lost. My voice shook despite my effort to steady it. Not just physically, he said. Lost in themselves. In life, he glanced at me again, his gaze piercing. Sound familiar? My mouth opened, but no words came out. He didn't wait for an answer. The road keeps people who don't know where they're going, he continued, his voice almost wistful. But it doesn't keep everyone the same way. Some people get a ride, others don't. The words hung in the air like an echo, each syllable twisting deeper into my mind. I turned away, watching the shadows outside the window. They seemed to press closer, as if the night itself were listening. Others don't, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Sam didn't respond right away. Instead, he adjusted his grip on the wheel, his fingers drumming lightly against the leather. The faint glow of the dashboard cast his features in sharp relief, and for the first time, I noticed how tired he looked. Lines carved deep around his mouth, and his eyes held a weariness that felt centuries old. You'd be surprised how many people take this highway and never see the other side, he said finally. Most of them don't even realize it until it's too late. I stared at him, my stomach churning. What are you talking about? What happens to them? They become part of it, he said simply, his voice devoid of emotion. I couldn't tell if he was being cryptic or outright insane. Part of it? Of what? The road, he said, glancing at me. Every tree, every shadow, every inch of asphalt, it's all them. Their stories, their regrets, their fears. It's what keeps this place alive. A chill ran down my spine. This is insane, I muttered. This can't be real. Sam shrugged, his calm demeanor unnerving. Does it matter? Real or not, you're here now. The road's already got its grip on you. I gritted my teeth, my frustration mounting. Then how do I get off it? He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the windshield. Look ahead. I turned my gaze forward and froze. The road had changed. Where there had been a flat, endless highway, there was now a sharp curve that twisted into the shadows. My heart leapt with a mix of relief and dread. Finally, I breathed, leaning forward in my seat. A way out. But as the car approached the bend, the headlights revealed something strange. The curve led back onto the same stretch of highway we'd been driving all along. I watched in horror as the mile marker appeared once again. 33rd. No, I shouted, gripping the armrest. This isn't possible. We've been driving for miles. Sam slowed the car and turned toward me, his expression unreadable. I told you, the road keeps you until it decides to let you go. Desperation clawed at my chest. There has to be another way. There's always another way, he said quietly. But the question is, what are you willing to face to find it? The car came to a stop. Outside, the shadows seemed alive, writhing and whispering just beyond the edge of the headlights. My skin prickled as a faint sound reached my ears, a low, rhythmic hum, like the pulse of something ancient and waiting. Sam leaned back in his seat, his voice soft but steady. The exit's there, but you'll have to look for it yourself. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words caught in my throat. Somewhere in the darkness, something moved. The car idled on the side of the road, its engine a soft rumble that seemed to echo into infinity. Outside, the shadows pressed in, thick and unyielding, swallowing the faint glow of the headlights. I could feel the weight of the night closing around us, the air too heavy to breathe. Sam's gaze lingered on me, his expression unreadable. This is where you decide, he said quietly. You want to leave? Then you've got to find the way out. How? I demanded, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound firm. There's nothing here. Just the same road over and over again. There's always something, Sam replied, leaning back in his seat. He gestured toward the passenger door. But you have to see it for yourself. That's how it works. I hesitated, gripping the armrest as my eyes darted between him and the dark void beyond the car. The thought of stepping into that oppressive nothingness made my stomach churn, but staying felt worse. The road, the mile marker, it was a trap, and the car was part of it. Sam, whatever he was, had made that much clear. "I'll be waiting here," he said, his tone too casual, too knowing. "But don't take too long. Time's different here. Stay out too long, and you might not find your way back." The door handle was cold against my palm as I pushed it open. The chill of the night rushed in, sharp and biting. I stepped out, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots the only sound. When I turned back, the car's interior was shrouded in shadow. Sam's silhouette was barely visible, his eyes gleaming faintly, watching. The car door closed with a soft click, and I was alone. The darkness beyond the headlights was suffocating, a black so deep it felt alive. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a sliver of light, but the screen was blank, unresponsive. Swallowing my fear, I stepped forward, the cold wrapping around me like a second skin. At first, there was nothing but the oppressive quiet. Then faintly, I heard it, a sound just at the edge of perception. A soft hum, low and rhythmic, like the pulse of a heartbeat. It came from somewhere ahead, pulling me deeper into the void. The mile marker appeared before me, its faded number illuminated by an unseen light. 33. I shuddered, stepping closer despite the instinct screaming at me to turn back. As I approached, the hum grew louder, resonating through the ground beneath my feet. Then I saw it, a faint shimmer, barely perceptible, rippling in the air just beyond the marker. It was like looking through a warped piece of glass, the distortion revealing glimpses of something other. Shapes moved within, flickering like shadows on water. My breath caught as I reached out, my fingers grazing the edge of the shimmer. The air was colder here, biting and unnatural. The hum vibrated through my bones, and for a moment I thought I heard voices, faint whispers overlapping and incomprehensible. "Come closer," one of them murmured, the words sending a chill down my spine. "No," another voice hissed, sharper, insistent. "Not yet." I froze, my heart pounding as the whispers swirled around me. The shimmer pulsed, the shapes within moving faster, more erratic. The mile marker stood silent and immutable, a sentry guarding this strange threshold. I realized with dawning horror that this wasn't just a way out, it was a choice. I turned, searching for Sam, but the car was gone. In its place, the road stretched endlessly, the same barren expanse I had been trapped in since the beginning. The mile marker loomed behind me, its shadow impossibly long against the darkness. "Choose," the whispers demanded, their tone both pleading and commanding. The shimmer pulsed again, and I felt its pull, an almost magnetic force drawing me closer. My feet moved of their own accord, the hum growing louder until it drowned out everything else. The shapes within the distortion sharpened, their outlines shifting into something almost familiar. I thought I saw faces, my face, fragmented and broken, staring back at me with hollow eyes. "No," I whispered, stepping back, shaking my head. "This isn't real. This can't be real." The air shifted, heavy with expectation. The whispers rose into a cacophony, and I clamped my hands over my ears, but it did little to block the sound. The shimmer grew brighter, its light casting long, distorted shadows across the road. "Step through," the voices urged, their tones softening, coaxing. "It's the only way." I hesitated, my mind racing. What lay beyond that threshold? Freedom? Or something worse? The mile marker loomed beside me, silent and unyielding, a grim reminder of the endless loop I was trapped in. My chest tightened as the hum vibrated through me, each pulse stronger, more insistent. Taking a deep breath, I reached forward. The moment my hand touched the shimmer, the world shifted. The hum stopped, the whispers faded, and for an instant, there was nothing but silence. Then the darkness peeled away, replaced by a blinding light that seared my vision. When I opened my eyes, I was standing at the side of the highway. The road stretched ahead, empty and unbroken, and the mile marker, 33, was gone. The air was still, the sky above painted in soft hues of dawn. I turned, searching for Sam, but the car was nowhere to be seen. Only the faint echo of the hum lingered, a distant memory fading with the light. The road stretched before me, open and endless. This time I walked,